From downtown Decatur, it's the Faber Files. Hello, I'm your host, Bill Faber. The Faber Files is a public access TV program where you hear long interviews on TV, conversations about community interests and issues. Nowhere else on broadcast TV do you hear expanded conversations about things that are of interest to our community. Today's program comes from downtown Moweaqua, where our special guest is Carrie Downs, who operates a bake shop here in Moweaqua, and we're going to learn all about baking and its special interests in our lives today. Carrie, you got a beautiful shop here on Main Street in downtown Moweaqua.
Thank you very much.
You and your mom, Carolyn, run your shop?
Correct.
And how long have you been in operation?
We've been here at this location for 9 years.
9 years?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. And what is your specialty, Carrie?
Yes. There are a lot of different things we do. For the most part, it's a seasonal thing.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of cakes. Around the holidays, we do a lot of cookies. We do candies around the holidays. Actually, any time is a good time for food. But we do pies and cinnamon rolls, and working on some new things. We're just trying out some recipes for some cream puffs and trying to perfect some things that we just don't quite have under our belt just yet.
You know, so many communities throughout central Illinois no longer have professional bakers. How is it that you and your mom got motivated to set up a shop, a bake shop? Because it's hard work.
It is very hard work. Well, Mom has been doing cakes for about 40 years. It kind of started when my sister was a baby, and she took a class at JCPenney to learn on her own how to do cakes for us as kids. Well, that blossomed to, hey, could you bake this for me? Or, hey, I need this for a certain occasion. And we also worked at the former Mary's Cupboard and Samson and Lord in Decatur, Illinois, which had all the supplies. And they closed down, I believe, in 2002. And we had to go to Fort Wayne, Indiana to get supplies. That's a 7-hour one-way trip.
Yes.
And we had the opportunity to open up the supply side where people can come, and we carry a wide variety of things. We carry the candy melts for people to do their chocolates. We have the cake boards and the boxes that people can have to send their own goods out. We've got the novelty decorations, well over 1,000 different candy molds from people to choose from. But the baking side came out of that desire to blossom the shop. The supply side does not really take care of itself. So we do the baking here to help supplement the supply income side of things.
You're going to show us a project here this evening.
Yes,
and
we
what
are
are we going to see?
We are going to decorate a 10-inch round double-layer chocolate cake for you guys to take back to the office and enjoy.
Okay.
And then we're also going to do a cake that the viewers can do at home, something light and springy as we get into the swing of the spring season. Kids are going to be out of school pretty soon, summertime. Just a fun, tasty, nice, light, fluffy dessert.
I bet the audience is anxious to get started here.
I hope so. All right, let's get to work. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to decorate our 10-inch double layer cake. We'll start out with a round cake, and if you have some overflow on the edges, you want to trim that off. Always work with a lot of paper towel and a sharp knife.
So what are you doing now, Carrie?
I am trimming off the rough edge because when I put it on top of my other cake, we don't want to have to fight it with the frosting, so it's not going to shine through. And chocolate cake is really a crummy cake anyway, and I mean that in the best sense of the word. Not crummy tasting, but just crummy, kind of flakes off. So you want to be sure that you don't have the crumbs in your frosting. But sometimes if you fill your pans a little full, you're going to get a little bit of overflow on the edges. So we want to just take that overflow off. Then you can prepare your favorite frosting. We choose to use a simple buttercream frosting of powdered sugar Crisco, water, marshmallow cream, and vanilla with a little bit of salt. It stands up better and lasts longer than if you use butter or milk in your frosting. And also, if you use butter, you're going to get an off-color frosting. If you use the straight Crisco, which is white, you're going to get a truer colors when you go to color your frosting. We're going to put a thin layer of frosting on the bottom cake. because you have to have something to hold the two cakes together. And if your ovens aren't quite level, sometimes you'll get a cake that leans. So when you do a double layer cake, you want to put where you have a high side and a low side. When you flip the other one on top, you want to put the low side with the high and the high with the low to balance it out. So let's eyeball this. And that looks, that's my high side, that's my low side. That's my high side. Flip it right on top. Now with a 10-inch cake, that's pretty easy to do. If you start getting up to 12, 14, or 16, it gets a lot harder because you run the risk of cracking your cake. So what we're going to do now is we're going to glue it together with the frosting and give it what they call a crumb coat. This outer coat of frosting is going to pick up what crumbs might go into your outer layer of frosting. So, always keep your knife clean, otherwise you're going to get chocolate crumbs in your nice pretty white frosting, and that means you're not going to be a very happy camper after that. Frost that around. Some people like to just get the middles. I like to go around and frost the bottom because the bottom is where you often have a lot more crumbs to pick up. Also, keep your board clean. And remember, this layer of frosting does not have to be your perfect lip layer. It can be a little rigidy there. And your crumb coat is finished. And before we start doing the main coat, we're going to get rid of all of our chocolate crumbs. Because inevitably, if you don't, you're going to pick some up that you don't want. We're going to let that sit a minute. And for the viewers at home, we're going to do what we call a strawberry angel food cake. While this is sitting for just a minute, we're going to let that settle out. If you want to purchase an angel food cake at your grocery store or bake your own, excuse me, you've got an angel food cake. Go ahead and get it baked, let it cool, and you want to use, you can either do a sugar-free Jell-O or a regular Jell-O. When you make up the Jell-O mix, do not put the full amount of water. Do your 1 cup of boiling water and maybe 3/4 or only a half a cup of your cold water so that it will set very well. We've already got that in the microwave. That's all right. Just to get our Jell-O made. Go ahead, and other than the shortening of the water, go ahead and make it according to direction. Make sure you get it all dissolved. And then we're going to add our cold water to it so that it will set, and then we're going to pop it up in the freezer for a quick set. About 3/4. Give it a good stir. We're going to go in the freezer. We're doing that right now so that we can get it set to show you how it's going to go inside the cake once we're ready for it. Back to our chocolate double layer. Now, if you like fillings in between your cakes, instead of spreading the icing like we did, you could make a well of icing around your cake and then add your favorite filling. A lot of times we do a black raspberry if you want a fudge filling. You just won't want to make it too full that when your top cake sits on top, that it won't come out the sides. So, some people choose to frost their cakes differently. Some people pipe it on with a bag. We're going to use a knife. And one thing when it comes to cake decorating is people are sometimes afraid of their knives. They're afraid of either slapping too much frosting on or digging into the side of the cake. You want to be generous with your frosting, especially with a chocolate cake, so you don't find any coming through. So it looks like I'm going to put a humongous amount of frosting on the cake. But after you start spreading it out, it's not going to be that thick. Work from side to side in your motion, that way you can start getting an even spread.
Carrie, do you find an advantage to using the knife as opposed to the bag application?
I think a lot of it is personal preference. Some people don't have the strength in their hands to squeeze a lot of frosting. Also, when you work with a bag, the heat of your hands will start melting the Crisco in the frosting, so you're going to get some discoloration there. So, and it depends. On a 6-inch round cake, if you start frosting side to side too much, you may start making your cake lean. So on a 6-inch round, which is a very small cake, so a lot of people prefer the piping method so that they don't manhandle their cake too much. When you get to a 16-inch round, that's a lot of ground to cover with a bag. So, but I think a lot of it is personal preference. And when I frost, I don't just put my icing in one single application. I go pretty much all the way back around my cake to smooth it around, so you're not just working in clumps and lumps. And occasionally you're going to drop some icing on your cardboard. That's okay. We can wipe that up in a little bit. You never want to send out a dirty cardboard because it's just bad presentation. And occasionally you're still going to get the crumb you don't want, so go ahead and take it out wherever you find them. Hey, and we're just about done.
Now your frosting knife, Carrie, looks like the absolute perfect tool to use for what you're doing. Where can the viewers get a tool that's as good as yours?
Why, at Cake and Candy Connection, of course. We carry so many of the products that we use to decorate with, and we're not going to give you something you're not going to need. There are some people who just don't handle big tools well, so we've got some smaller knives to work with. Some people prefer a straight spatula versus an angled spatula like this one is. It all depends on your personal preference, and we try to meet those needs as the customers have them.
As in anything, in building anything, if you have the right tools, it makes the job a little bit easier.
Yes, sir. It certainly does. There are times where you have to improvise. But be very careful the tools with which you choose to improvise, because sometimes they can backfire on you.
Now it looks like you can have the perfect amount of frosting for this job. How does the baker determine the amount of frosting to prepare for the application?
A lot of practice. Sometimes your cake books, if you choose to get a book that shows you different designs and how to do different cakes, will tell you for a 9-inch cake you're going to need X amount of cups of frosting. And many people who don't do a lot of baking do go by those guides so that they don't make too much. We just go through a lot of frosting, so most of the time you can get about 3 or 4 cakes out of a bowl. This is a 40, I believe a 38 or 40 cup Tupperware bowl. You can get 3 or 4 cakes out of one bowl of frosting. But a lot of that comes with experience and trial and error as far as figuring out what you're going to get from icing. I believe this takes two KitchenAid bowls worth of frosting. So now that we've got our top frosting on, we want to get rid of some of our excess, kind of smooth out our corners just a little bit. Bring it up over the side. Now, this is not our finished product cake. You see a lot of ridges, you see a lot of air pockets. We're going to smooth those out. You also see frosting along the board. When you have that, take your knife, make sure it's clean, and if you've got that excess frosting, just kind of skim around the edge of your board and take off that which you do not need. Sometimes people get a little frosting happy and they get a little excess. So we're going to set this aside for just a moment and let it air dry just a bit before we smooth it out. Getting back to our strawberry angel food cake. When you do your strawberry angel food cake, you want to have several things ready. You've got your Jell-O setting right now. About a pint of strawberries. Go ahead and wash them, slice them, dice them, quarter them, however you like to do it. Get those ready, because what we're going to do is put the strawberries inside the cake. You're going to take the top of your cake off. You need a nice serrated knife. We're going to stick it in about 3/4 of an inch to an inch down below the top of the cake. We're going to work our way around the cake. Just moving. You can go left or right, depends on which way you're more comfortable with. And once you work your way around the circle, we're going to take the top off. Now, you need a fork, and about a 1/2 inch from the inner core, you're going to start working that away from the edge. Because what we're going to do is we're going to make a well inside of our angel food cake.
And what are you gauging the depth of the well to be, Carrie?
When you look at your angel food cake, you don't want it any deeper than your fork, but you don't want to go all the way down to the base of your cake either. So I would say within about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of your cake, that's how far down, how deep you go. Now that you have your inside circle, you want to go about a fork width to the edge. Once you get that established, you're going to do the same thing and make a well, just pulling away from the outside edge of your cake. You're not necessarily going to get a precise measurement all the way around just because angel food is an airy cake. But what you're going to do from then on is you're going to scoop out that middle. Now, some of you may be tempted to eat the inside. Go ahead and take a piece or two, but we are going to put it back in to the cake. Carolyn's checking on our Jell-O there. It's not quite ready, but that's okay. Scoop this out. So that what you have remaining is a fairly hollow angel food cake. For the moment, we're going to flip our top back on there, set it aside. Now we're going to smooth out our big cake. Over the years, several people have developed their own methods of smoothing a cake. Some people just leave it as it is. Some people have what they call a decorating comb, which is often a piece of metal or plastic with grooves etched into it that are like teeth, like you see it. The ice cream cakes have a groove around the edge. They do that with a decorating comb. Some people use hot water on their knife to get it to smooth, kind of melt that frosting down a little bit. Some people use wax paper. We choose paper towel for a few reasons. Number one, you can get texture. Oftentimes, especially if you're doing a sheet cake or something that doesn't have a whole lot of decoration on it, it's just kind of plain in the background. Where if you use a paper towel with texture, you can put that texture on your cake. So I will demonstrate. A fine paper towel connoisseur can walk down the aisle, and Bounty has squares, Brawny has circles, Sparkle has hexagons. Some of your off-brands have some very pretty patterns. But now that our cake has had a moment to have some air time to crust over, we're going to lay the textured side of our paper towel against our cake. And different people have different methods of smoothing. Some people use a knife and go around. I prefer to use my hands with the paper towel because I can feel the ridges. I can work them out as I go. When I feel that it's been sufficiently smoothed, I'm going to take my paper towel off, and voila, you have texture.
That's amazing, Carrie.
That is practice and trial and error. Now, a lot of people, especially as they prepare for weddings, are looking for the super duper smooth cake called rolled fondant. You can achieve that look without the nasty taste of rolled fondant.
What's it called again?
Rolled fondant. You have to work with it kind of like pie dough. It's, you can make your own, you can buy it pre-made, you have to knead it to work color into it, you have to roll it out just like you were putting it on a pie, and then you have to cover your cake with it. You still have to frost your cake underneath with something for it to adhere, for the fondant to adhere to the cake. But most of the time if you buy the pre-made stuff, it's not very tasty. But you can achieve the fondant look with Viva paper towel. It's the smoothest towel on the market. When you go to smooth your cake, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to lay it up against your cake. And some people start from the top and smooth down. I start from the bottom, especially when I'm doing my paper towel. Start from the bottom and work my way up so that I can get that super smooth curve look on my cake.
Boy, Carrie, you're sure offering the audience some real tricks of the trade.
I haven't even shown you the best one yet. But these are things that we've learned over time. And oftentimes, when you go to do cake decorating, everybody has their own way of doing things. Some people are left-handed, some people are right-handed. Some people have a different way of holding a piping bag versus others. And when we teach cake decorating class, we let them know that, you know what, there is not necessarily one right way to do things. We show them the basics of what they should be doing, but the mechanics of how they get there are going to be different for everybody because everybody has a different way of doing things. So, once you have smoothed your cake, you can get the rolled look.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about your cake decorating classes, so if the audience were interested.
We teach cake decorating classes through Richland Community College. They are offered in the fall and in the spring. As a matter of fact, tonight we have our third course coming to do some work. First class is basic cake decorating. What you will learn in basic cake decorating is how to make your frosting, how to tort a cake, which is taking a two-layered cake like we started with, slicing it in half, each layer, and putting a filling in between it and frosting it. That's what you call tortilla cake, so that when you cut it open, you're going to have 4 layers instead of 2. You will learn how to decorate a character cake, how to use the cake pans that are offered by various companies. You will learn how to ice a sheet cake and draw on it, and cupcakes. Now, as we move into the second class, they've kind of changed the system around on us, the Wilton cake decorating method. Used to be they did all flowers in that, so that when you go to do a cake and put spring flowers on it, you'd know how to make all the flowers. Third class is some rolled fondant work and actually putting a 2-tiered wedding cake together. So if the viewers are interested, they can contact Richland Community College. The next session will be starting in August, and that will be beginning cake decorating.
Do the students need any prior experience?
No, they do not. We have some who come that have been decorating for 15, 20 years and they just need a refresher course. Some come self-taught and some come knowing absolutely nothing. And they will say, I don't have a clue. And once they get done, they, the ones that want to learn, have a deep desire, will put a great deal of effort into it. And they often do very, very well. We don't see it as a competition because everybody's coming in at a different skill level. We see it as a time of training. You know, there are a lot of people with the economy going the way it is. There are a lot of people who can't afford to go out and purchase cakes for what they do, for their occasions. So they will come in and say, I just want to learn how to make cakes for my kids' birthdays. By the time they're done, they're either going to say, that was really worth it, or you know what, I'm just going to pay somebody else to make my cakes because it's really hard. And it is quite time consuming, but once you learn the skill, you've got it for a lifetime. This is one of those skills that travels. When if you get transferred or your spouse gets transferred and you have to move on, this is a skill that you can take with you. I spent 3 years teaching music in Montana, and one of the skills that I carried out there with me was cake decorating and candy making, which ended up working as a fundraiser for one of my student body classes. So, have skill, will travel.
The classes are held here.
Oh, also on the cake decorating classes, they are taught, or excuse me, you go through Richland to sign up for them, but they are held here at the cake shop in Moequa. Normally on Monday nights from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Just been going around and not checking what I've been smoothing out, but give it a once over here. Working out any of the ridges that you find. Now, if your frosting gets too dry and you try to go and smooth it, you're going to do more damage than you are going to be doing good to it. So if you get to a point where your frosting's too dry, it's best just to leave it and get it as best you can. Don't force it or you'll cause more problems. Alright, you see the smoothness around the side of the cake.